I've been very poor and I've been wealthy, and wealthy is better. There's nothing wrong with failure, but I'd be lying if I said we created that $9 billion of value that Slack is worth. It was not that great. I looked at my bank account the next morning and I was like, all these zeros. And I'm like, wow, every successful business has at least 2 people behind it. Effort means a lot. Experience, not so important. Well, the hardest part for any entrepreneur is just starting.
Welcome to Maximus Odyssey.
Hey guys, and welcome to another awesome interview, hopefully. Today I'm here with Pezaris, and sorry for my voice, it's still mid-sore after being sick. That's why I've got this with me. So, Peter is quite the successful entrepreneur. You founded and successfully exited 3 companies, and Commission.com, Multiply, and Glip.
Right.
And now you're the CEO of Codestream.
That's right.
So, could you give us a bit more background on where you come from and like some short descriptions of what we were doing before Codestream?
Sure. So I've been an entrepreneur and CEO for 23 years now. And a big part of our story is that I've been working with the same group of guys for all that time. So we were friends in college, and after college, we ended up working on Wall Street. But then one night over beers, we decided to start a company.
All of you.
Well, the 4 of us, yeah. Really, we had no idea what we were doing because we knew how to program, but we didn't know how to start a business. We didn't know what revenue was or EBITDA or net revenue, nothing. Like, we're clueless. And so those early days were a lot of hard work and a lot of learning. And we built a company on, as they say, sweat equity. So we didn't raise any money, and not because we couldn't, we just didn't know how. We didn't know what venture capital was, or like, we thought that taking a loan from a bank, like who would give us a loan? We were just a bunch of kids. And so we built a business, I guess the old fashioned way, which is we didn't spend $1 until we earned $1 in revenue. And so that first company was called Commission.com.
Yeah. So, like in startup terms, that would be bootstrapping, right?
Right.
What
I guess, yeah, that's what it's called now. But back then, this was before, like,
yeah, well,
that
what
existed.
year was that?
95, we started that business.
95.
Yeah, long
That's
time
not even
ago.
alive. That's really cool.
Right. And, you weren't alive, and the internet wasn't really either, because at the time, like, it's funny, like, I remember the first time I saw a bus go by, and on the bus there was a billboard that said, I forget the name of the company, but it was like, pets.com or something like that. And I was like, holy crap, it's a URL on a bus. And today, like, you've never known the world without websites, but you have to imagine, like, what was it like before we each had a cell phone and a website? Like, it's very different. And so we made a big bet on the web and started a company based on that. And turns out we did okay.
Awesome. That was the Commissioner.
Yeah. And that was fantasy sports online. So people had been playing fantasy sports. Is actually kind of popular, but you had to be a super hardcore fan because it took a lot of time to do all those calculations manually. Mm-hmm. So like the commissioner of our league, I asked him, because I played like 1 season before we started that company. I asked him how much time he puts in, and he told me it was 8 hours a week. And I was like, well, what if we could do all of that for you? How much would you pay? And so as it turns out, there were other services that you could buy. Like, you could basically pay somebody to run your fantasy league. Mm-hmm. And those were like $350, $400 a year. But you're basically just having somebody else do that work for you. So somebody else is spending the 8 hours doing all the calculations manually. So we're like, well, what if we built a program to do it? So we built a website, and, it was just so much better than what was out there that we just took off.
In that time, a lot of companies were bringing the offline world into the web, right? Similar to like Amazon and what these guys did.
Yeah, I don't think that stopped. Like, I think people are still figuring out what other businesses can move online. Although it's a little bit different now, because between now apps are huge, websites are huge. There's a lot of different ways to interact electronically, and mobile is, even bigger than the web. So I think people are still trying to figure that out. But even, I was talking to somebody earlier today that was talking about moving ownership in brokerage accounts to the blockchain, which is something that if I'd said those words 5 years ago, nobody would knew what the heck I was talking about. But now it makes all the sense in the world, because if you think about it, if you own a share of Apple stock, what does that really mean? Well, it means that your broker sends you a statement that says you own a share, but you can't prove that to anybody else. And the only thing you have to go on is the reputation of whatever bank you have that in. So what if I could provably say that I own this thing? And that's where blockchain comes in. So it's incredible how much technology continues to change our life, and even the things that we've taken for granted for dozens or hundreds of years. Now everything's being reinvented.
Speaking of things being reinvented, what do you see as the next big thing, or an area or industry that is growing really rapidly right now and probably in the future?
So it took a while. People were talking about the shared economy, and how companies like Uber are really changing the game in terms of how and that's so fundamental. It's changing how everybody, the whole transportation industry is changing, and that might even continue to change, because I'm sure you may have read about Tesla's ultimate goal, which is that if you buy a Tesla, because they've got such good autonomous driving technology, I can own the car and it's still my car, but while I'm not using it, I can basically rent my car out to the Tesla fleet, which will work like Uber, only without drivers. So my car will go drive somebody somewhere, and then I'll get it back. And, what they're basically say is that you could basically get a Tesla for free, because I can make enough money doing that I can make my monthly payment on the car. So essentially, I get the car for free. So it's an interesting thought. So I think there are going to be more and more things like that. There are a couple of companies that are doing something similar with scooters, where you can, just take a scooter anywhere. Lime and Bird are two of those companies.
Actually, Prague, the city I'm based in, Lime just came into the city.
Right.
I don't know, a month ago.
Right. Yeah, I was in Mexico City, and rather than scooters, the way that they were solving that problem was with bicycles. So they had very, very similar thing where you pick up a bicycle from the street corner, you bicycle to wherever you want to go, and when you're done, you just leave it there, and the app helps you locate where all the bicycles are. So I think things like that, where we can take advantage of unused inventory, where people aren't making use of all their possessions all the time.
Yeah.
Because if you think about how, we become very materialistic over the last 50 years or so, we all have so much disposable income that we don't know what to spend it on. So we just collect things, but it's incredibly inefficient, because we end up just with this pile of things in our house that we never use. And so, I know I've got a toolbox full of tools, for example. How often do I really need that hammer? Right. And so that's a bad example. It's hard to share, but there's so many things that we own that I think could be, either done a different way, or we don't all have to own a copy of the same thing.
Such as I've been to a bunch of startup competitions. This idea of sharing, I don't know, gardening tools, stuff like that, has come up very often.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen one that like really pulled it off yet.
Yep.
So
that part of that may be because it's not a great idea, but part of it might be that that people aren't ready for it yet. And I'll give you an example of why sometimes people aren't ready. So in 2003, we started a company called Multiply, which is essentially, it was like super similar to what Facebook is today. Now, Facebook launched around the same time, but back then Facebook wasn't anything like it is today. Back then, all Facebook is connected profiles. So I would have my profile and you would have your profile, and I could look at your profile or somebody else's. Yeah. But they didn't have photo albums, and they didn't let you share in a news feed, and you couldn't see all the updates from all your friends. It was just basically bouncing around from profile to profile. So anyway, we launched this product, and when I talked to friends about it, if you described Facebook to somebody in 2003, they thought you were like, why would I want to put all my personal life online that anybody can see? And then you tell them, no, it's not anybody that can see it. It's just your network of friends, your closest. There's so much mystery in that whole concept. And they say, well, what would I do with it? And we would list a million different examples, and like nobody cared about the concept of it. And if I had told you that 15 years later, teenagers around the world would be taking like 100 selfies a day, and they would take a picture of their lunch and share it with their friends or their cat. It's like nobody would have believed me, like how many people are using social networking today. And yet that took over the world. So that's something the world wasn't ready for until it became common. And then once everybody else started to do it, then of course everybody sees the value. So maybe renting a lawnmower is the same, or sharing a lawnmower is the same as like, and yeah, one other example, which is that, and I don't know if you've seen this, but 20 years ago in airports around the world, every suitcase was the same, which is that it had a handle and 2 wheels, but only 2 wheels. It's not because they couldn't make a 4-wheel suitcase back then. There were, every once in a while you would see one. It's just they weren't popular. And there's nothing fundamentally that's changed between that day and today. But now you go to an airport and almost every single suitcase has 4 wheels because it's just easier. Like keeping your suitcase upright and be able to push around is easier than having to lean it and support its weight. I don't know what changed. I don't know why everybody all decided to get 4-wheeled suitcases, but sometimes it's just the market has to get ready for something. And that's an important insight for people building businesses. You have to build a product that's right for the market at the time you're building it.
So with, well, we talked about the first 2 businesses.
Yep.
Bill, the third one, the last one that you've exited is called Glip.
That's right.
Can you give us a bit more about that?
Sure. So Glip, it's funny because we launched Multiply at the same time as Facebook with a very, very similar product. Well, with a product that was it was what Facebook became, which is kind of interesting that, and it was, this is a little tidbit. I was at a conference where I was hearing from Adam D'Angelo, who was the CTO of Facebook in the early days. Now he's the CEO of Quora. And he was talking about the early days of Facebook and how, for those familiar with the history of Facebook, they grew really, really fast for a while. And then Yahoo made an offer to buy the company for $1 billion. And Mark Zuckerberg said no. Right around the same time, they tried to go, because they were only university students at the time. You had to be a university student to use it, and they enforced that. Around the same time, they tried to open it up and let high schools in, but that didn't work at all. And so they had just turned down $1 billion. Their growth had stagnated, and their biggest project was to go to high school, failed. So morale at the company was super low, and they were looking around saying, well, what should we do? And so what they did was they looked at the fast-growing social networks around them and copied their best features. And so the 2 things that they put in were their contact importer and their newsfeed. And both of those things they got from Mark and Barry, right? And so, and then Facebook took off. So I feel like
there's no like patent on this stuff. Right?
No. And so I feel like although we had success with Multiply, we were this close to having, like, what's Facebook worth now? 200 billion or whatever it is. So we were this close to having that kind of breakout success. So now you asked about the last business, which is Glip. So when we started the next business, we made sure that nothing we took a lot of lessons from the first business. Yeah. And so we built Glip, and Glip launched the same month as Slack. We had spent a year building it, but we went live, and like within a month Slack launched, and it was the same product. When I took a look at Slack, I was like, we just built that thing, right? They didn't copy us this time. This was independently developed, but we both built the same thing. And where Slack succeeded, there's a number of reasons that Slack succeeded, but one of the big ones was that they had Andreessen Horowitz and Mark Andreessen as their backer, as their venture capitalist. And they had Stuart Butterfield as their CEO, and he was a very well-known guy among people that matter because he had started and sold Flickr, which was a very popular service. So between that and their connections, their initial growth was just, they came right out of the gate. They had a very favorable article on TechCrunch, and they got 8,000 people to use their product in the first day. And we were Nobody. And it took us like 6 months to get 8,000 people to try. So we were always smaller than them, but growing at around the same rate. So it was always like we were just a little behind them. And so we ended up selling the company to Ring Central, which is a publicly traded communication company. They do mostly telephony stuff. And we were a perfect match for them because they had all the back end for a real telephony system. And we had the front end and all the messaging capability. So by merging the two capabilities together, right now, if you're a Ring Central customer, you're actually using Glip software to, message and call and do all those things with their product. So it was a great combination, ended up being a great acquisition for them. But I'd be lying if I said we created that $9 billion of value that Slack is worth. Is not that great. So it's like two companies in a row where we've been I feel like we've been this close to having this super grand slam home run. And yet.
I gotta ask, is it hard sleeping at night, knowing this?
Well, it's funny because, on the one hand, if you look at our overall track record, we've been working with the same guys the whole time, and I can't complain. I can't complain at all. We've been very successful in doing what we've been doing, and we've made a lot of money. And one of the points of pride that I have is that as a CEO, I've made money for every single investor that's invested in us. So that's not a bad thing, right? And yet, I feel like, viewed through a different lens, it's like we failed with Multiply because Facebook kicked our ass, and then we failed with Glib because Slack kicked our ass. So, and that's why, with Codestream, luckily when we launched this, there wasn't an equivalent project. We still have we're still ahead of the curve. There's nobody else that has something very similar, and we're just working hard to make this one the big one.
Wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you.
But yeah, the most important thing is enjoying actually doing it and actually the process, right?
Yeah.
And if that happened, then
yeah, and one of the things that I've learned is that we've had success over the long run, but there have been a lot of challenging times in between. And one of the things that is definitely true is that while you're in some of those challenging times, it's hard to have as much fun. When the company is successful, just everything's more fun. Your staff meetings are more fun, your emails to each other, whatever it is, just work becomes a lot more fun. And so we've been really fortunate to work together for so long. And so we know each other. We're best friends, Claudio, my partner, married me at my last wedding. He was the officiant. So we know each other at a very, very close level. Yeah. And so we can rely on each other when times are tough. But it's a lot more fun when the business is doing well.
So along with that, as I can call you now a serial entrepreneur. Right?
Yep. Okay.
You've experienced a lot of big downs.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of ups, but with the failures, how do you cope with them? Is it always different, or do you use something to help you get through the hard times?
I think that one of the toughest lessons to learn is that the default mode of building a company is failure. That most of the things you're going to try are not going to work. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because if even 20% of the things you tried worked, then, every week you'd have some big success and your company would take off like crazy, right? So you should always be trying new things. I mean, not every company has to do that. And most of those things are going to fail. And you just have to come to terms with that there's nothing wrong with failure. And one example is when you're raising money, you're going to pitch an investor, and that investor's probably going to say no. And then you pitch the next investor, and that person's probably going to say no. And then the next one's and you don't need them all to say yes. You just need a couple, right? And so it's just a matter of how many times do you have to do that thing before you find the success. Because it's totally unreasonable to expect, a lot of investors, for them to line up and say, oh yeah, I want to invest in me too, and me too, and me too. It's not that easy. And so accepting failure as the default is tough, but you have to.
So the first business you ran for the most part from your own money? Is that correct?
Yeah, we didn't raise any. Well, we ran it from our customers' money because we didn't have any money. We didn't take any investors. And so we didn't have any money. And so for 3 years, I slept on the floor of the office. I couldn't afford an apartment. And what we were able to pay me was $10,000 a year, which is not a lot of money. I'm not sure if that's a big salary in Prague, but in Manhattan, it's nothing.
Yeah, you can spend that in a month easily.
Oh yeah, yeah, in a heartbeat. And so, we ate a lot of big bowls of pasta, and I never went out, and I never did things like buy beer or anything like that. And going from that to selling the company was a very, very different experience because now, I've been very poor, and I've been wealthy, and wealthy is better.
But before going to that $10,000 a year, and speaking of the start and grind that we just left,
Yeah,
you mentioned that before that you had like a pretty well-paid job
yeah,
on Wall Street, right?
yeah, yeah. And what happened was that as our business started to pick up, it became impossible for me to be doing both things. I would work an 8-hour day, excuse me, at my day job on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And then I would get home and work another 9 or 10 hours, if not more. And so every day I was physically just exhausted. And it got to the point where I was bleary eyed. I was incoherent. I could barely function. And I called my partner, Mike, and I said, how do you do it? Like, I've drank all the coffee I can drink. I've taken note of like everything I can think of to try to stay awake. And I'm just like useless here at the office. And he said, well, I'll tell you what I do. I go into the bathroom, and I sit on the stall and like I take a little nap. And I was like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. So I hung up, go over to the bathroom. I'm sitting there, and right next to the toilet, there's a toilet paper. And it's at the perfect height where I can just like lean my head on it. And so I fall asleep immediately, and it's like comfortable. It's awesome. So I wake up and I go into the sink and I'm washing my hands, and I look up into the mirror, and there imprinted into my forehead, it says, if roll is empty, slide cover to right. And so that's the moment when I knew I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I have to, I have to pick one or the other. And it was a no brainer. Like my heart and my soul and like everything I had was going into the startup. But not getting a paycheck was tough. And so what we did was, one of my other partners, like Mike and I quit, and one of the other partners kept his job. And so he basically shared his salary with us.
Wow.
And to get us off the ground. And then once we earned money from the company, then the company paid us. But every time we had even a little bit extra money, we reinvested into the company. Like we bought better computer. Back then, AWS wasn't a thing, right? So you had to buy your own computer. So we had to upgrade our computers or upgrade our network capability or things like that, or hire a customer service rep because we needed, somebody to answer all the emails and things like that. And so it wasn't until we sold the company that we had any money at all. And it's funny because like 1 year in, if you'd asked me, are we successful? I would have said, I have no idea. Because our growth is good, revenue is good, but it's still such small numbers. If you'd asked me 2 years in, I'd be like, I have no idea. Because if we were really successful, I wouldn't be eating ramen noodles and bowls of pasta, right?
Yeah.
If you had me 3 years in, are we successful? I don't know, because we have employees, we have better revenue, but it's still like, I don't know if we're a success. And then our partner, so we had partnered with CBS Sportsline, and some of the executives there asked us out to lunch. And so we said, okay, we'll go have lunch. And while we're at lunch, he's like, listen, we want to make an offer to buy your company. And I said, okay, what's the offer? He said, we'll offer you $16 million. And this is for a guy who's sleeping on the floor of the office and eating ramen noodles. Like, I was happy to be taken out to lunch, right? And he says, here's $16 million. I picked up my jaw off the floor, put it back in my mouth, and we thought about it. And we said, well, maybe we do have something that's worthwhile. Because at that time, I had no idea that it was worth millions of dollars. And a month later, we sold it to them for $46 million. And because, that was just their initial offer.
Yeah.
And my bank, I had $17 in the bank. That was it. That's all the money I had in the world. And then I looked at my bank account the next morning. I was like, all these zeros. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. And so in like collection on all of these businesses, you've sold them for roughly $350 million, right?
Yeah, and I wish I could say all of that was mine. That would be cool. But I have partners and investors. But it's it's not a bad. I'm not complaining. So there's a lot of people that work hard and don't find that success.
Yeah.
So I think we've been fortunate to have each other as a team, and also we've had good fortune in building those businesses. But I think that there's another aspect to it, and advice for anybody who's looking to start a business is that you want to work hard to put yourself in a position to become lucky, because if you give yourself enough opportunities, eventually something's going to pan out. And so what you try to do is when you're starting a business is create as many chances as you can for something to break in your favor, and then you can create value that way.
And right now you're working on Codestream.
Right. What's Codestream? So Codestream is a service that helps development teams discuss, review, and understand code. Now, the way that we do that is a very, very simple concept that if you're a developer, you will appreciate. If you're not a developer, you'll think I'm crazy because you'd think, oh, that must exist already. But it's weird is that it doesn't. So if you're a developer, the way that you typically work is that you have something called an editor or an IDE, integrated development environment. And the purpose of that editor or IDE is to help you write code. And much like Microsoft Word, it helps you write a document. So what Microsoft Word allows you to do and Google Docs allows you to do is that if you and I are working on a document together, and let's say you write the first draft and then I'm helping you proofread it. If I see something that I want to change, well, what do? I just select the sentence that I want to comment on, and then I just say, hey, change this to capitalize or whatever I want to say. And you know immediately exactly what I'm talking about because when you view the document, you see the same comment and you know what I'm pointing to, and so it's easy. Right?
Like cooperative working online.
And what's crazy is that developers don't have that. Right? For developers, like imagine instead if I had a copy of the document and then I had to send you an email and I would type the to, and then I would type a subject, changes for this document. And then I'd have to copy and paste the URL for the document. And then I would just say on page 5 in the third paragraph on the second sentence, when you say this, if I had to do that manually every single time I wanted to suggest one little change, that's harder to do, right? Yeah. And yet that's exactly what developers are faced with today because there's no collaborative function within any IDE. And so Codestream solves that problem. Codestream allows developers, when they're looking at code, if they have a question or a comment or anything like that, they can just select the code, type the question. That's particularly important for developers because software is hard to understand. Like if you're writing code, sometimes you're like, how does this work? Well, who's the best person to ask? Well, probably the person who wrote that code, right? So with Codestream, you can just ask a question and then your teammate can answer it. And then the nice thing is that question and that answer are saved as an annotation to the code base so that the next developer who comes along might have the same question and now they can see the answer.
I tried software engineering for a beta as well.
Yeah.
And like you can really see in a company that's larger.
Yeah.
For example, if someone types the code before actually putting it on the web, someone has to proofread it. Like,
right.
It's called code review, right? And yeah, there can arise a lot of questions. They need to like mess each other, and it takes a while.
It does. And there are, to be clear, like so I don't like oversell what we're doing. There are code reviews tools that allow you to do exactly that allows you to message each other, and that's great. But a code review tool basically gives you one chance to review the code before it becomes part of your code base. Mm-hmm. Once it's part of your code base, there's no capability for you to ask a question about that anymore because it's now baked in. And so that's where Codestream comes in. So especially if you're managing a large code base, let's say you could have 5 million lines of code, no problem. New developer trying to figure all of that out, it's really difficult. And so inevitably that new developer is going to have questions and Codestream provides a really simple way for them to ask those questions.
And so right now with Codestream, you're not making any revenue? Is that correct?
Not yet. So we're in what we call preview or beta, which is people can try it. We're interested in feedback, and you can use it for free. But we also have a freemium business model, which works like Slack and GitHub and others, where you can use it up to a certain point for free. And if you want our premium features, then you can upgrade to a pro plan.
Yeah.
But we don't actually have that in place yet. So you can use all the features for free for now.
Cool. But it's not like you haven't put any money into the system, right?
Yeah.
There's probably something from what you made in the earlier businesses.
I did put a small investment into this company, although we participated in Y Combinator, which is an accelerator program. And as
most famous one in the world.
yeah,
I heard about it.
it is a great, fantastic program. I'm a big fan. One of the things they do exceptionally well is that they gather investors to talk to the companies that come through the program. And that helps you raise money more easily. And so we've raised now a total of $4.7 million. And so we've got plenty of cash.
On something that hasn't sold
Right.
or hasn't made a single dollar.
Right. We don't have $1 of revenue yet. And so we're going to use that money to make sure we get the product right. There's a lot to this product because, I use the analogy of Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and between Google Docs, Microsoft Word, and maybe Apple Pages, there's really only 3 editors that anybody cares about when writing documents. But in the software engineering world, there's like 15. And so for us to be successful, we have to develop a client for all of the major editors, and that takes a lot of work.
So with all the businesses you've built before, it was always something pretty much completely new.
Yeah.
In the sense that it might have incorporated like something that people already knew and used, but it was always like a new concept that, for example, with Slack, it did like the completely new concept happened at the same time, but bringing something unknown to people. And what was the process of like bringing people in and like explaining it to them or selling something they don't understand?
That's super hard. Yeah. That's the hardest thing you do, because the story I can tell is that with Multiply, and remember, this is the thing that's equivalent to what Facebook is today. So now, like, everybody gets Facebook and everybody uses Facebook and everybody understands why you would use Facebook. Although maybe we're even more similar to Instagram. I don't know, but like people get that, and people use Instagram and immediately they see the value and they start using it. And they do that because all their friends are using it, right? That's the number one determinant. Like, if your friends are using it, then you'll use it too. But in order to get those people to use it, those first people to use it, it's really, really hard. And so what we did, we launched the product, and I remember when we launched it, I was so convinced that this was going to change the world. Like, I was on top of the world because I thought that we're going to change everything, and this was going to be the biggest company ever. Uh-huh. And the first day, we all registered, and invited our friends. And so we had 15 users sign up. And the day after that, 25 users. And then the day after that, 18 users. And I'm like, And the day after that, 12, and then 15, and then 10, and then 20. And and it hovered right around, 20 users per day for a long time. And we were trying to figure out, is something broken? Is it not working? But it was just that, and when we talked to those people, they just didn't get it. They didn't understand why, because it was a new way, like you said, it's a new way to communicate. It's a new thing that they weren't used to doing. And ultimately what we were changing is that, they were using email for a lot of those things before. Like, if they wanted to send news to their friends, they would email their friends. And getting people to give up email for this new thing was really difficult. And so we made the mistake of assuming that what we had was an educational problem, that people just didn't understand it. They didn't get how great it would be. So we tried to educate them. And so we wrote guides and walkthroughs and explanations and this and that. And none of that worked, but it got so bad that because we thought that we had to just educate them, to hold them and shake them and say, come on, use it. So my favorite example is that like at one point when it got really bad, like you would click on the photos tab. So you can imagine like using a product like Instagram. So you click on photos and we literally had like a walkthrough trying to explain how to use photos on Multiply, that if you printed it out, it was 6 pages of text. So it's like you have to go to school to use our product, right? Like you have to study to understand it. And, you know, shocker, nobody wanted to read 6 pages of text just to use a product, right? But we didn't understand that at the time because it was the early days of the web so what we did was after a year, it took a whole year of things not working before we realized we needed to do something totally different. Mm-hmm. And so, we ripped all of that stuff out. And I made a rule for the company is that if you can't say it in less than 7 words, you can't, like, there can be no phrase on the website that's more than 7 words. That's it. That's the maximum.
Why 7?
That's arbitrary number. No idea.
Okay.
And, basically to get us away from writing paragraphs. And so when you clicked on the photos button, instead of explaining to you how photos work and how you're sharing them with your network, but not really publicly for like all that stuff and why you would use nothing, none of that. Basically, you clicked on the photos button and you go right to the photo uploader, which was a thing back then. So basically the equivalent of like Instagram hitting the camera button. And now you're taking a photo and you're going to share it. We're not explaining what's going to happen, who's going to see it, who's not going to see it, nothing like that. It's just share your photo. And that changed everything. Like people learned by doing it rather than by reading about how to do it. And our numbers went like from here to here. And then we made a couple other changes and then they went to here. But a year of flatline, like no growth, that was tough.
So you kept like, user marketing to get the people into the like pipeline.
Yeah.
But they were falling off before you cut out the like unnecessary descriptions.
Yeah, and
is that like the writer's journey?
Yeah. So what's super important for any product like Multiplier, Facebook, or Instagram is like the only thing that's going to determine whether you're going to be successful or not is whether you end up with a critical mass of activity. If you have enough stuff happening that it looks like stuff is happening, then you win. And if it doesn't, then it feels like a dead zone and nobody's going to be like, who's going to start that up? So it's called the cold start problem. How do you get that going?
Yeah.
And for the first year, we tried a lot of different things, but ultimately we couldn't get enough people to contribute enough content that when that next user came, they saw what looked like enough activity to convince them to contribute content. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like this virtuous circle. Like if you see stuff, then you'll add on top of it. But if you see nothing, you're not going to add anything. So it's this like tipping point of like, you just have to get just a little bit over the hump. And once you get a little bit over the hump, then you're growing.
Do you think it can be faked?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story is that MySpace, which actually predates both Multiply and Facebook, that's exactly what they did. And what they did, and this isn't talked about a lot, but it's totally true, is that they created a bunch of fake profiles that they ran. My first 3 contacts on MySpace were Avril Lavigne, Sting, and Cindy Crawford. So there's 2 famous rock and roll stars and a supermodel. Now and they became my friend, right? My contact. I'm positive it really wasn't Sting. It wasn't Cindy Crawford, right? And so MySpace employees created these profiles, uploaded photos of the famous people, and then when you messaged them, they wrote you back. Of course, it wasn't really Sting, but I thought I was talking to Sting, and that was so cool that I could talk to Sting on this new platform. Who wouldn't want to? It's like the ultimate nightclub where you're like surrounded by celebrities and supermodels, and that got them their first growth.
Interesting. They probably wouldn't go through today.
Well, now people know know to look for that fakery, but back then nobody knew that it wasn't Sting. Yeah.
Wow, that's a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Talking about money right now, would you be willing to share, like, from making $10,000 a year, like, 22, 23 years ago, to where are you now?
Right now, I make $0 a year, because, well, in salary, because one of So it's weird because like my income, ever since I sold that first company, I haven't taken a salary because it's, the way that startups work, if you think about it, is that if I invest in the company and then pay myself a salary from the company,
You're actually a losing percentage in the.
then I have to pay taxes on that income. And so like it's silly, right?
Yeah.
I should just, rather than investing and then paying myself, I should just invest a little less and then keep that money to live off of. So that's sort of, so I make, and it's kind of, it's not for everyone because I see my net worth just every month go down. And then I have to hope that I sell another company. Then I see my net worth go down. But then I hope I sell another company. So that's basically, it's like a sawtooth function. And right now I'm on the downward slope. So, it was tough when I was running Glip, that we weren't able to get outside investment. And so I was the only investor and we were burning $200,000 a month. And so every month I would write a check for $200,000. And the first couple of times I did that, that was okay, right? I was like, yeah, go, After a year of writing $200,000 a month checks, it's tough to get out your checkbook. And after 2 years of doing that, it's really tough to keep getting out your checkbook. It's like, what are we doing? And after 3 years, I won't say we were close to the end of my rope, but that's a lot of money to be investing in something that you're not sure if it's going to work. And the good news is that we ended up finding success when we sold that company. And I got all that back and more.
Yeah.
So it worked out.
So what would be our net worth right now?
That's not something I'm comfortable sharing.
Okay.
But it's less than 350 million and more than zero. But that's, what's interesting about that is, so I haven't made a lot of money outside of myself, because I've got what they call a barbell investment strategy. And so the barbell is like something way over here and something way over here. And what they're talking about is like sort of investment risk. Mm-hmm. Because investing in myself is so risky, because startups are inherently risky, all of my other investments are super, super safe, which means like, treasury bills and stuff like that. This doesn't make a lot of money, but it's safe. And then my overall risk profile is reasonable. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I haven't made a lot of money outside of investing in my own stuff. Yeah. But at least it helps me, you asked before, it helps me sleep at night knowing that I've got what I've got. And when the market is up or down 500 points, I don't have to worry about that as well. So I just have to worry about my own company. You have your money work for you in a way as well? Or is it just like laying there, collecting maybe 0.5% a year or stuff like that? So mostly it's just laying there in a very, very safe investment. Although I have allocated a small amount over the last couple of years to do some small angel investing, but pretty small. Yeah. And as part of Y Combinator, I have access now to the companies that are coming through YC. And I figure what better group of companies to invest in than the ones that have been handpicked by the most exclusive startup incubator. So if I could pick a couple winners from there, that might help as well. You found like already a few times something that you can totally devote yourself to, like work up to, as you said, like 20 hours a day. Yeah. Have you always had something in your life that was like that, or how did you find it? Yeah, I think I've got a pretty addictive personality, so I'm either an on or off switch. Like if I do something, I do it way too much, and if I don't do it, I don't do it at all. Because of that, and I think I learned that early enough in my life that I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, not even once. I've never smoked pot. I've never tried any drugs because I'm a little worried that with my addictive personality, that if I do that even a little bit, I'll do it way too much. And that's not good for anybody. So I guess I've always been passionate about the things that I'm interested in. And I've been, I guess, not fortunate because, we've been intentional about it, but I got so super interested in the World Wide Web all those years ago that it continues to interest me today. And I found different parts of it that have continued to be challenging. And right now, what I focus a lot of my creativity on is user interface design. So I'm always looking for that new great way to deliver value in a very, powerful value in a very simple way. And so that's what I like doing now, is building those types of products.
And now shifting more to the practical stuff. When launching a business, especially with like little to no experience, what would you recommend doing?
The hardest part for any entrepreneur is just starting. And what I mean by starting is that when you have an idea in your head and you're like, oh, someday I'm going to start a business. And then maybe you spend a little bit of time working on it and you produce a document or write a small program or whatever it is. It's really easy to abandon that. And you say, oh, I'll work on it next month, or I'm really busy and whatever. That you haven't really started it, in my opinion, at that point. So the hardest thing to do is to start. And by start, what I mean is that every week you're devoting some time to it. And every week, maybe a little bit more than the week before. And getting that off the ground so that there's some activity happening is kind of like the cold start problem I was talking about before, which is that you need your business to have activity. And the first major milestone that you'll get is when that happens. And then the second major milestone is that when you convince somebody else to join you on that journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important because nobody can do it themselves. With very, very few exceptions, almost every successful business has at least two people behind it. I guess the biggest exception is probably Amazon. But just about every other company, there's at least 2 or 3 or sometimes more founders. And so getting somebody else who believes in your vision and believes in what you're doing is invaluable. And then the next big milestone, which this is when you really have something, is when there's enough happening within the company that even if you were to step away, the company would continue. And that's when you started a business.
You also mentioned that you've never written a business plan.
Right. I think it's a waste of time.
How's that? Like, because in like so many like competitions and educational startup programs, business plan is like such a vital part.
Waste of time. There may be some value in thinking through the ideas that go into a business plan, but I think the number of, first of all, if you ask any successful entrepreneur, like what was essential to your success, like literally 0 of them will say, oh, I wrote this really great business plan. That's what we needed to get. No, none of them will say that. And second of all, I'd be super surprised if any of their business plans were in any way accurate. Because with a startup, you're trying so many different things and so many things are changing. You'll never, even if you put together what you think is a great business plan and you get an A on or you get the top prize at a competition, if you end up building that business, it's never going to end up being that business that you described in that business plan. It's always something else. In fact, I was talking to one of our investors who is a big time investor. So he's been working in the Valley for a long time and he's made a number of very successful investments. He said he's never even once made money investing in a company that ended up succeeding at the thing he invested that they were doing at the time. So all of them do some version of a pivot. And it always ends up being different than you think. That's why don't spend too much time on a business plan. But some great advice that we got from Y Combinator, couldn't agree with it more, is that as a startup, you should really only be doing 2 things. Number 1 is build a product, and number 2 is talk to customers. That's the only thing. Don't do anything else. Build a product, talk to customers. That's it. And everything else you'll figure out from that.
But you do like some sort of planning, right? You can't go from day to day.
We
just
do.
Working.
Sure. And it also depends on what stage you're at, right? When you're first starting a company, your goal is to produce something that's going to get somebody else excited, and a plan never does that. Like a business plan is never going to do that. A prototype is going to do that. A picture, even a mock-up of something. And then the way that you describe it might get somebody excited. And then you have to get customers to get excited about it, and they're not going to get excited about the business plan. So it's really pretty far into the process before you even have to worry about that. And like what we do right now is we're one of the millions of companies that run an agile shop, so we're software development, which means that there's this sort of cadence to what we do. And on Monday, we have our planning meetings. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have our stand-ups, and we do a weekly sprint. And every Friday, we do a demo to each other what we accomplished that week. And that works for us. Now, that's not for everybody. Some companies do 2-week sprints. Some people don't do an agile process. But we don't spend a ton of time on like grand vision planning documents. Certainly, I would never do a plan that was more than 1 page long. If you can't fit it on 1 page, you're wasting your time.
After doing all of this, what's next for Peter Pezaris?
Well, right now, as I said, I have an addictive personality. Right now, my addiction is Codestream. So we're working really hard on making that business successful. After we do, like my goal in life has always been, I wanted to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So like that means either building Codestream up into being a very large business, or I guess getting acquired by a large business and then getting promoted. That would be okay too. But that's sort of the goal. And, that doesn't happen with Codestream, then I think it's likely that I'll do another startup because I don't know how to do anything else. But further down the road, and no time soon, but further down the road, it's funny, like it's kind of weird for me to think about it because I'm sure at your age, you don't even think about this at all. But I know what my retirement's going to be because my hobby is woodworking. And so I've decided that once I retire, I'm going to become what's called a luthier. And that's somebody who makes violins and other instruments. So I'm going to use my woodworking hobby to help other people create music because I think there's something beautiful about that.
That sounds beautiful. Incredible. So any final piece of advice for young people listening right now that probably want to go into like building something on their own, but still like are missing the experience and probably the connections? What advice from the heart would you give them?
Sure. Effort means a lot. Experience, not so important. When we started our first company, I didn't know anything about. So if you think that you're not experienced enough to start a company, well, I was less experienced than you are when we started our first company. All I knew how to do was write code. And so we just do what you know, basically, and have confidence in yourself that you'll learn what you need to learn. And you'll learn it when you need to learn it. I remember I bought a book about how to start a company. I stopped reading after the first page because I disagreed with all of it. Turns out the book was right and I was wrong. So I really didn't know anything. So I guess the toughest part is just to get going and have confidence in yourself that you can do it. And don't worry about the excuses because every company started somewhere, right? Everybody started somewhere. And why not start your story today?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
For any of you programmers out there, go check out codestream.com. They're free right now. Probably useful.
Give it a try.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. I'll do the outro later. Peace.
Now, subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. And please share this with your friends if you think this could help them.